Honorable Union Minister of Petroleum and Natural Gas and Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, Shri Hardeep Singh Puri ji, former Secretary Power, Mr. Anil Razdanji, former Chairman and Managing Director GAIL and Member Petroleum and Natural Gas APTEL, Dr. Ashutosh Karnatak, and Sudhir Pal, who has been instrumental in bringing us all together today at this very prestigious conference. Ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to you. As the context has been set so aptly by both Sudhir as well as Dr. Karnatak, I will try to put a similar context, similar views, but put them together to bring in different perspectives. It is, first of all, my absolute privilege, and I wish to thank the organizers, thank ETEnergy for having me here, and EIL is grateful for having us as part of this very prestigious conference. Gas has always been a subject of much debate and equal importance. And when we look at today, where India has set itself a climate goal to achieve net zero by 2070, which is not just ambitious, but in my view, it is very aggressive. It is also to reiterate today a fact that India's GDP continues to grow. The numbers are projected to be around 7% in this complete year. And it goes hand in hand with the need of our nation to increase the per capita consumption of energy, which is just 1/3 of the global average today. The challenge is multifold, and some clearly defined targets have already been set out by the Honorable Prime Minister in that direction. Whether it is the power sector, which is taking the non-fossil fuel generation capacity to 500 gigawatt, and meeting 50% of India's energy requirements from renewables by 2030, or similarly, reducing the carbon intensity of the economy by more than 45%. The low carbon pathway has been clearly defined, and it has clear goals which are set out. Let me share with you some of these goals. One is the 20% of blending of bioethanol in gasoline by the year 25-26, which reduces import dependency, also brings in security to the economy. Producing 5 million ton of green hydrogen by 2030, and Dr. Karnatak has very, very elaborately explained the details of the hydrogen economy. Building the gas economy goes hand in hand in this game of things, by bringing up the current consumption of 6.3% to 15% by 2030. There is another element which is playing a defining role in this economy, which is biogas. Looking at 5,000 CBG plants to be set up by 2024, which will be nearly equivalent to about 1/3 of our total gas consumption today. There's something close to 15 million tons equivalent gas with an investment of $20 billion. This is part of the Satat Yojana, the sustainable alternative towards affordable transportation initiative by the Government of India. These are all set targets, defined pathways to a decarbonized economy as we go forward. This will also rapidly transform our primary fossil fuel dependency of the economy to a near 100% renewable for within the next 5 decades. It's indeed a very ambitious and a very aggressive target. Making this transformation, in my mind, is something like a Formula One race which has no pit stop at all. And the question is, do each of us, do India, does this nation or the globe have any choice? To my mind, it has no choice. We need to move in a very sustainable, in a very well-defined planned manner in the future. In this context, the gas economy has always played a very major role as a transition fuel, and the targets are always set high, and all enablers to meet this must be put in place. India's government considers the development of the natural gas infrastructure, including long-distance pipelines, regas terminals, distribution stations, CNG in the transportation sector, imperative and a priority. Almost all of the Government of India's policies which are in place and those that are under formulation, which are, one of it is gas pricing, are driving this national transformation. Let me put two contexts in place before I move further on this subject. One is we have, and Dr. Karnatak mentioned this as well, we are the fourth largest importer of LNG in the world and have a regas capacity of 42.7 million tons per annum, which is going to be expanded to 62 million tons. We have almost 6 projects which are under construction, and 5 are new ones, and 1 is under expansion. India is also the third largest consumer of LPG, with 28 million tons per annum consumption, which caters to over 31 crore Indian households. And I will touch on this context a little while later, because the gas sector and the LPG demand is interlinked. Before I move ahead, the one thing which is an imperative to building a very robust gas economy is the infrastructure. And it plays a very major role in the penetration of gas to each and every one, each and every industry, as well as its volume expansion. It's actually, to my mind, something like a catch-22 situation, whether we put in the money for the infrastructure or we get the gas first. And I firmly believe that the infrastructure must be in place to have that impetus to growing the volume of gas in the economy. Consumer behavior primarily is affected by a lot of factors. It is affected by the price, it is affected by the availability, it affects the economy of the area, economy of the state, economy of the nation, and it needs investment support. And the government has always been very supportive of infrastructure development with a lot of support in terms of investments. And this is the reason why changes have happened in regions. This is very instrumental in the industrial regional development for several states, which is some states which need development more than the others. It also ensures availability to the CGD sector, particularly the fertilizer sector, wherein we are largely dependent on huge imports, and a higher gas price actually jacks up the subsidy substantially to almost 1.5 times to what it would be in a scenario about 2 years ago. Power sector, which is needing gas supply at an affordable price. The petchem sector, steel sector, manufacturing sector, and so many other areas where gas is the clean fuel, the bridge fuel. In this context, the current gas pipeline network of 22,000 kilometers is expected to grow 1.6 times to 36,000 kilometers by 2030. And a huge projects, EIL is part of some of these prestigious projects which are being implemented in the country. This will bring connectivity. But it is also essential that this connectivity reaches the last mile. And that is where in India we have found a more detailed, more concerted effort to take place, because that last mile connectivity always holds the key to reaching it to the ultimate consumer. As you all know, CGD authorization is already issued to 98% of the Indian population, and thus this network is essential for gas connectivity to enable this to happen. I also believe that when we couple this infrastructure, gas infrastructure, the last mile connectivity, and we couple this with the Satat program, it is likely to have a distributed approach in terms of the supplies, and it would be very, very important and crucial to bring in the objective of 15% contribution of gas in the primary energy mix. Satat can be actually a game changer and also help bring in reasonable price stability and insulation from market volatility. Of the 5,000 plants which are planned, more than 3,500 LOIs have been issued, and there are some policies to be taking in shape in terms of pricing of the gas and other byproducts, which would actually turn around the sector of the compressed biogas. Let us also put in context some of the numbers, and it is important that we compare how India is placed vis-a-vis the globe. In 21-22, India consumed about 48.63 million tons of CNG, which is, of which about 49% is imported. And if we look at the global average, it is 4 times some of the EU countries, and the per capita consumption is almost 20 to 25 times in those countries in comparison to India. So we are nowhere close to the per capita consumption of the first world countries. And India does need to grow. India does need the energy. We need to be there in 2047. If we are to go in this fast track route, path, we need to have a lot of action on enhancing the domestic gas production as well. It is good to have imports. It is good to put policies, and I'll touch upon them in a little while, but it is equally important to put thrust on domestic production of gas. The opportunities in E&P sector with the key reforms in place and the enablers which have opened up almost 3.36 million square kilometers of the 26 sedimentary basins, looking at $150 billion investment by the year 2030, is definitely going to jack up the oil and gas production. Sudhir mentioned the production was up about 21% from in the last year, and we hope that this will go up with the interventions being in place by both the private sector and the public sector who are in the game of gas production. From the year 2016, India's government has implemented policy changes, giving companies more pricing freedom and allowing them to market natural gas at higher prices. This is undergoing review, and I will shortly touch upon some key points of the recommendation of the committee. Data holds the key, and therein a lot of transition has happened. A lot of state-of-the-art interventions have taken place by the Director General of Hydrocarbons and the National Depository of Data, which is helping in fast-tracking exploration, decision-making process, expediting those investments towards E&P is indeed a welcome step. International collaboration, to my mind, is necessary. We don't have to go around reinventing the wheel. Today, a lot of oil and gas companies are transitioning towards green. They are changing their image towards non-fossil-based investments. And this throws up opportunities for the Indian oil and gas sector to actually enter into collaborations. And some of the oil companies have entered into international collaborations, particularly in the exploration sector, to bring in technology and enhance the domestic production. So having mentioned on the impetus needed for enhancing the domestic production, we need to deal with the gas markets which are uncertain globally. These challenges and uncertainties are nothing new. They have been there for a while with us, and every few years we get into this cycle of analyzing and trying to sit at a position to predict what the prices will be. And more often than not, there have been interventions like the current Ukraine war, which has actually uh, stepped all these predictions in one direction and have resulted in prices which are so volatile and difficult to predict, difficult for decision-making process. If you have seen the news lately, there have been a lot of countries, particularly Germany, China, who have signed long-term contracts with Qatar for supply of LNG. Europe's surging pursuit of LNG, phasing out these supplies from Russian pipeline, with limited global LNG export capacities, have actually added to the risk of a prolonged and very tight market in terms of gas. The faster development and implementation of clean energy transition, competition, and particularly in the mature markets, may ease price competition and help the emerging markets access supplies. It can contribute to the short-term improvements in helping reduce the carbon intensity and air quality. And this is what we hope for. And this is one reason why we cannot stop India's exploration journey. It, in fact, cannot be a journey anymore. It has to be really fast-tracked into a race. One of the other roles of diversifying gas market is India investing overseas. And this is something which we cannot overlook. These are strategic and must be done. Most of our PSUs are in the oil and gas space, which are looking at exploration, have played a major role, and close to $38.5 billion worth investments have happened in the E&P sector overseas up to the last financial year. This is essential to strengthen the national energy security. Even diversification of the market of LNG up to 2016, India only purchased LNG mainly from Qatar, but now we have expanded to the US, the Australia, and Russia. Shifting today in terms of LNG contracts, the global era of long-term LNG contracts are no longer the in thing, but we have seen in the news there are long-term contracts being signed. So it is the fluctuation of spot prices, for example, is really dampener for both the buyer as well as for investments to happen. So how do we work around the contracting, long-term contracts, de-risk the investments which is necessary for expansion of the capacities of production? So these are all factors one has to decide and discuss in the boardrooms to see how to go abroad, invest overseas, or how to do the contracting to secure the energy supplies for the nation. You know, the LNG market, if we see before COVID-19, was very bearish. And there were a lot of FIDs which were supposed to happen. But then things changed. So we need to be there, present in a multifaceted way to handle all these crises. There is no guarantee that they would not occur simultaneously again. So insulating them, learning from the past is important as organizations, and as well as in terms of policy, in terms of support, and in terms of other interventions that is required to bring up the gas economy. Let me very briefly also mention Dr. Kirit Parikh's recommendation, which have come out very recently, which is helping in a long term, building on India's natural gas pricing, balancing local consumers, producers' interests, as well as looking at a gas economy as we are remaining in uncertain times. These are indeed very significant, some of which wherein there is a price band of $4 to $6.5 per BTU recommended for the domestically produced gas until a full deregulation of prices happened. We are needing to move into a mature market of gas pricing, and the recommendations are largely directed towards step changes such that these do not actually have a huge impact. They help, they nurture, they cradle the development of the country in terms of CGD penetration. They help in bringing energy security in terms of good pricing for the fertilizer units, which is essential to reduce both the subsidy burden as well as the import burden in terms of importing urea primarily. These are a direction in which the incentivization when we talk of this report, it looks at 2027 as a target year for complete deregulation. And as industry will deliberate, ministry will deliberate on these recommendations, we hope to it will bring more stability into the investments of the gas economy, primarily in the private sector. So moving forward, I would sum up in three large categories. One is how we balance the seller and buyer. What do the producers need? They do need volume certainty. They need to finance their projects, and they need a cash flow stability also. Consumers also need supply-side security. They also need to be assured that the volumes that they have transacted, what they have contracted, will be given to them at the price that they have fixed. Pricing flexibility as well. The volatility of the pricing in the global market must be passed on to the consumers in some manner or the other. Even flexibility of destination could be another factor which needs to be built by the consumers in their contracts with the sellers. The organizations must have a portfolio approach. They should better plan. So an optimum mix of all kinds of contract, long, medium term, short term, maybe maximum allocation to the long-term contracts, with a vision of decarbonization roadmap in their minds. The industry is an asset-specific. It needs term contracts to de-risk their investments, and it also facilitates financing. This recent surge of LNG prices is again going back and pushing buyers to look for a secure long-term contract which can be adhered to and can be fulfilled and honored. Gas, I would say, in summary, shall remain a very important energy source for the Indian ecosystem. Various focused interventions of the Government of India to encourage the vision of gas in the hydrocarbon sector by enhancing its basket to 15% in the primary energy mix by 2030, steps and policies which are helping this gas economy actually have the right ingredients in place. A focused approach towards development, integration of pipeline networks, judicious approach towards pricing, policy, taxation, GST, which I'm sure all of these subjects will be discussed in the two-day workshop. Clearly defining policies towards sectors, sectorial utilization of gas will definitely help develop and transition towards the gas economy. And eventually, we hope to see in future and in a defined time period, a very robust and mature gas exchange, which is similar to the power exchange for a clean and sustainable India. Let me end. Dr. Karnatak started with a shloka for the Surya Devata. So we hope that gas will bring, a feeling of being safe. And Chandra actually represents peace of the inner world, the world that is within ourselves. So let me end with a shloka for the Chandra Bhagwan. Dadishanka tusharabham shiro darnava sambhavam namami shashinam somam shambhor mukutabhushanam. Thank you.